Hey and welcome to the Creative Odyssey podcast, a podcast about entrepreneurship, creativity, and personal growth by me, Emil Ruth. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show.
So, I'm here with Luca Dellanna. And Luca, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Emil, for having me here.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time. Why don't you just introduce yourself? Who are you? What are you doing?
Yes, so about half of my work, I am an author and a researcher. I've published 11 books on a variety of topics from personal growth to behavior management, statistics, economics. And then the other half of my work, I am an independent management advisor. And I work mainly with business leaders to help them manage their operations and they risk their careers.
11 books. Did you heard that right? So,
Yes.
As someone who's just starting out in writing and working on my very first book, and I've seen that most people only get into like writing one book and not passing that threshold, or maybe have another one. So, how did you get into writing this regularly and publishing multiple books?
Yeah, so what happened is that out of university, I spent the first few years of my career in a corporate consulting firm. And then I really liked my job, but after a few years, I felt like I've learned it. I could do it by myself. Yeah. And so I quit my corporate job. I moved back to Italy, and I became an independent consultant. However, what happens, and I didn't really think it would be so strong, is that I was good at finding clients before, also because I had a big corporate brand. And when I became an independent consultant, it was much harder at the beginning, especially to find clients. And so I happened to have a lot of free time on my hands, and I absolutely hate doing sales. And so my solution was, I also have a lot of things to say, and I will put some of those in books, and clients will find me by reading the books, and then they find that I have interesting things to say and do, and then they will hire me. And so that's how it started. And it continued to this day. Like my day basically is when I'm working on a client project, I work on that, and then in the rest, maybe there is during the week there are a couple of afternoons that I'm not working on client projects, and then I immediately switch to writing.
Yeah, in this case, it's pretty cool that you have a second asset, as you just mentioned before we're starting. Not only that you build your reputation on being a writer and having a published work or multiple published work, in that case, build your brand and your reputation and your trustworthiness. But also it is as to seen as like another income stream. Is this part of your strategy, or do you just publish books for your brand and your reputation?
To be honest, I publish books because it's for me like the natural thing. Like what happens is that during my work or in general my life, I came out on so many things that I see that questions that people ask and I answer them. For example, especially my clients. And then when I see that I answer, like people keep asking me the same questions and I answer, and then the answer works out in the real world, I know that I have the material for a book. And when I have the material for a book, like I just cannot stop thinking about it. Like I have this energy that wants to put it out. And so, to be honest, I will probably do it even if it didn't help with finding clients. Then the fact that it does is a very nice thing that helps me avoid having to do sales. But it's not the primary motivation.
It's like a win-win situation when writing a book and you're already think about the format. As I heard correctly, you gather the thoughts and you automatically produce a book in your head. And
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the reasons why people like my books, is that I never start with I should write a book. What can I write it about? But instead, it's conversation I already had, things I already tried and tested, and I know that they work. I know that they are effective, and I know that people benefit from learning. And then I put them in the book. And this way in which the selection effect happens ensures that the content of the book will be interesting and relevant and useful to people.
And I personally find it really interesting that you, if you have client work, I mean, in general, client work, oftentimes, if you're doing consulting, you are referring or recommending further books for the clients to read and work on. And in your case, you can recommend them your own book. How does it feel for you?
Yes, so to be honest, I almost never recommend books to my clients. The reason being that generally, if there is a piece of advice that is relevant to them, and I'm saying this because my books are on almost all different topics, so it's very difficult that the client will find me because he read one of my books. There will be another book which is so relevant that I will tell him to read it, and if it is, I will just give him the advice because it's more effective, like by word of mouth. What happens more likely is that the client who read my book then buys sometimes even hundreds of copies for his employees to read. This is much more common. And actually, right now, I've started working with a couple of companies where I had this idea that sometimes companies, they have a printing partner which prints their booklets, promotional material, everything. And so right now I'm licensing my book to their printing partner so that they can print at a much lower cost internally the book. And I win both because I get paid licenses and because more people read my books. And for them, it's also good because they get the logistics are easier, and because they get to get my books at a lower price. And
I only heard of this in theory, that you can license for specific booklets for a company, but it's nice to hear that you can actually do this. It's some part of the distribution of a book or of the content you rarely think about. You just think about getting either like a scientific publication on like a Springer link or something like that, or having an open access, or you go to the full public route and doing a more popular style business book or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that there are many like publishing options which are let's say underweighted nowadays. Probably because 20 years ago it was very difficult printing was clunky. It had to be done in large batches. You had to work like there were fewer people doing it. And nowadays, instead, thankfully, with the advent of technology and everything, it's so much easier. And so there are solutions that didn't make sense maybe 20 years ago, and now they make a lot of sense. So I think it's really about the author to know who their audience is, and then be relatively specific, and then try to work in that direction.
Like self-publishing became much easier in the years.
Yes.
And do you self-publish your books, or do you have a publisher?
So all the books so far are self-published, and the next one will probably be published by an actual publisher.
Yeah, so it's good that you had the chance to build your reputation in writing multiple books and trying and testing it out. And after that, you got a publishing deal, and you have, as I read, is again from theory, that it might be good that you already have better cards in your hands when it comes to like the cost or the deals that you get when you're talking about the book deal.
Yeah, exactly. Like in this case, it's I probably wouldn't have gotten this deal if I hadn't published other books, self-book published. Yeah.
So, talking about like the habit of writing, as you said before, every time you have like a spare minute or you're from backing up from a client that you're then just writing, and you briefly mentioned in the introduction, the listener hasn't heard yet, that you just published a book, Winning Long-Term Games. And in your writing, I see that you write for the writing's sake and getting the information done. And you don't seem to me, as of right now, that you don't follow a specific goal when it comes to writing and just producing it. What do you think is important when you're just thinking about long-term goals?
Yeah, so on what you said, like my objective when I write a book is to lay down as clear and succinctly and actionably as possible, whatever the book is about. In this case, the book Winning Long-Term Games is about the fact that I noticed that so many people, even people with long-term objectives, such as a great career or something, or maybe like a very happy family or something like that, even though they have a long-term objective, they try to achieve it by playing short-term games. What's the difference between a short-term game and a long-term game? The difference is that the short-term game leaves you with nothing after it ended.
Yeah.
It doesn't leave you with skills. It doesn't leave you with good relationships. It doesn't leave you with trust that you built with others and so on. Whereas the long-term game is the one in which as you proceed, you build yourself trust, skills, relationships, and so on. And the thing is, in the short term, playing short-term games make you progress faster.
Yeah.
And this is why it's so tricky. For example, if you try to sell copies of your books, for example, and imagine that there are two authors, and one author sells by playing short-term games. They exaggerate what their book is about. Maybe they invent fake reviews. Maybe they use some exaggeration, such as this book will make you rich, whatever. And then there is the second author, which instead, the same book, he promotes it playing long-term games. So he's not trying, when he writes a tweet, when he writes a blog post, he's not trying to lead to the sale, but he's trying to build trust, to give valuable information and to build trust. What happens is that during the first few months, the first author, the one playing short-term games, will sell more copies. But what happens is that after 1 year, after 2 years, readers will start to catch up. They will start learning that this guy cannot be trusted, and they will stop buying from him. So what happens is that the long-term strategy is better. The difficult part is that if you play long-term games during the first 2 years, first year or first 2 years, you will see everyone else getting ahead of you faster. You will feel like you're falling behind, and the temptation to switch to the short-term strategy of the other players is extremely strong. But I always say it's like the casino, the croupier.
Yeah.
The croupier is the only person at the roulette table with a money-making strategy.
Yeah.
All the other players, they have money-losing strategies. However, because if you play the Russian roulette, the roulette, you will lose money over time. However, the tricky thing is that every night, the croupier sees at least one player getting very rich. But he must resist the temptation of switching from his good money-making strategy to the worst money losing strategies of the players. And I believe that a lot is like this, both at work, but also in personal life. We need to resist this feeling of falling behind because we look left and right and we see short-term players getting ahead faster, because we know that in a few years their strategy will stop working. And we are better off with a long-term strategy.
Yeah, thank you for putting this. And I definitely agree. And I see that it is hard sometimes, especially when in the beginning of a career. And as I'm studying right now and consider if I maybe do a master's degree after that. And these are considerations that might feel painful or dreading or maybe even costly in some kinds, or even difficult to obtain, but might have a much bigger benefit at the end. So I need to kind of weigh off what is more convenient and getting a quicker start, or should I wait a few years and then I'll have maybe better cards in my hand. And in my creative projects, on the other hand, I try to not have as many objectives. And maybe similar to what you do, I do it for the creation's sake. I'm building without an objective, just for the sake of the creation. But I think this needs to be a balance. So there needs to be an income stream on the one hand, and maybe room for the creative projects on the other hand. It can't work if you just have a strategy that doesn't rely on objectives at all.
Yeah, exactly. I think that like, since you mentioned planning, like, I think that the big differentiator is really not planning, or is not necessarily having like grandiose objectives. I think that the big differentiator is whatever you do, with whatever time horizon you're doing it, and so on, build trust and build skills.
Yeah.
And or even more importantly, do not never consume trust of others. And I think that basically, if you manage whatever you do while building skills and while building trust, I think that you will eventually be fine. The problem is when we take shortcuts and we build, especially shortcuts that work in the short term, because then we realize that we keep going, and then we wake up one day and we are 30 or 40 years old, and we realize that we lack the basics to level up above whatever we could have reached in our 20s.
So whatever you do, building consistent trust and skills is even better if you do it in like small amounts, like building step by step, getting just like atomic habits, being better just a little bit every time, and remain trustworthy over time. Is still more benefiting than kind of making money off of others or the trust, or blending or flexing something that you are not, pretending or something else. So even little progress is still better than to go this shortcut, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's very important to be focused on the substance, because, for example, learning skills, it's something that you can do it both. Like, if you take a master, you can learn skills, but in some masters you also don't really learn skills. And you can start working, and again, in some jobs you do learn skills, and in other jobs you don't learn skills. So it's really much about going beyond the surface and asking yourself, is this, whatever I'm doing, is it building skills? Is it building trust? Is it building relationships?
Yeah, right. And this is a really tricky example with the masters, as you're maybe like portraying trust, as maybe some employer sees that you went to a prestigious university. I often see this in finance job or something. The more expensive or more prestigious the university gets, that you have better chances, no matter if you're more skilled or not.
Yeah, exactly. This is also very country dependent. Like, if I understood correctly, you live in Germany, and Germany tends to be one of the countries that puts the highest premiums on longer higher education. So maybe the considerations there are more in favor of a master than they would be, everything else equal, in other countries that put less premium on certification and more either on relationships or skills, depending. So it's. I don't think that there is universal advice. Then it also depends on the people. I think it's just about looking at the substance, and whatever I'm doing, is this building resources which will make my future life better beyond the immediate future.
Yeah, to ask something a bit more generalistic, what's your what's your number one tip that almost everyone could do to have this effect of building trust and skills?
So regarding building trust, I think that it's relatively simple, not easy, but simple. It's just never exaggerate, never overpromise, and always use nuance. In the short term, you will feel like you need to overpromise, you need to do that. But the thing is, people, it's true that in the short term, they will always go towards the person that overpromised. But in the long term, they will remember who overpromises and who instead delivers on what promise. And over the long term, if you are someone who never overpromises, you will automatically stand out in the long term just because of that. And then on the skill side, I think that two tips are: one is ask what matters to people who are at a stage above yours. So it's not ask which skills should you learn at the current stage of your career, but it's ask what skills you should learn to go beyond a certain level in your career. Or the same thing, it would be, you can also apply it to relationships. Like there are some skills, for example, that are relevant for getting the first appointment, and there are other skills which are relevant for getting engaged or having a successful marriage. And they are different. The same applies to careers, so you should know that they are different and make sure that you don't only learn what's necessary for the very short term.
Yeah, good example. And good that you made the differentiation and the nuance of the skill, as I automatically had in my mind that I'm very good at approaching clients, but I'm not as good in like closing or maintaining the customer relationship, which I'm okay at, but I'm much, much better at like approaching and getting the first appointment. And I've never really differentiated it. I just thought that there's something lacking. But if you see this in the lens of a skill, then I have the possibility to improve that, and not only say, yeah, I'm so good at approaching a customer, but I'm so bad at keeping them. But if I really access the different parts of it, I can much, much better work on it. Or as I've seen this in other things, as you said, you don't really like to do sales, but I've seen that there are different people for different stages in sales for that reason.
Yeah, exactly. I just want to clarify for that. For example, like the part that I don't like about sales is the outreach.
Yeah.
Like with people I don't know. I'm very comfortable, for example, with clients I've already worked with, or people that come to me to some introduction, or people that contact me. They say like, Luca, I've loved your book. Can we work together? Like the part that I do not like is like putting myself out there with people that don't know me, for example. And as you said, it's very important to recognize that those are different skills. And the
other thing that I wanted to ask you is, as you said, don't overpromise. But on the other hand, what is it about maybe which I read recently or many times before, is that always under promise and over deliver. How sustainable is that mindset in comparison?
So I think that this is very sustainable. Another thing, another consideration which is important is to have clear whether you're going for the mass market or whether you're going for the best clients.
Yeah.
Because the mass market will be more sensitive to over promises, to what sounds grandiose and so on. And instead, the best clients, the ones who are a bit sophisticated, they are able to pay a lot for your work, but they also have the knowledge to determine whether you're a charlatan or not, for example. They will be much more sensitive to someone who uses nuances in their messaging and who knows what they're talking about and doesn't overpromise. And I have the preference for the second type of client, but it's just a preference. There is no right or wrong answer. But I think it's very important to know what's your customer base, because you cannot switch easily from the mass market to the top clients because they require different. And so it's about knowing these. And for example, like if you look at my Twitter, I'm generally quite balanced on a lot of things.
Yeah.
And on the one hand, it's true that I am less likely to go viral on things, but then my way of messaging resonates particularly well with the best clients. Because they are the ones who appreciate nuance. So it's the thing is, though, if you look only at likes, or if you only look at number of emails you receive and so on, then of course it looks like the first approach is better, like overpromising. So it goes about knowing which client, which part of your market you want to work with, and then being good at ignoring what works with the rest.
Yeah. And so you're going for a much more balanced and nuanced communication, but you're not underestimating what you're doing and be like purposefully under promising and doing and promising much less that you're capable of. As I heard from your saying, you're pretty realistic when it comes to what you can deliver, right?
Yes, usually yes, but it's also because, like, at least in my field of work, which is management consulting, it's extremely hard to know what you can promise before you talk with the client and you see what's their situation, and so it's extremely, like, it's also ethically hard for me to promise, I don't know, I will lower your costs by X%.
Yeah.
Because there are some companies with which when I see them, I know that we can lower them by Y%. There are other companies when I see them, I know we can go by Z%. But if I don't see the company, I cannot promise it. And if I had to make a promise that works for everyone, I would have to choose an awfully low number, which then would not make me exciting. But that's something like quite specific to my field of work. But I think it applies to a lot of other works as well. I think that the alternative is, for example, showing testimonials. Like, if you show testimonials, it's a great way to demonstrate competence and to almost promise results without having to give a specific promise.
Yeah, and in that case, you can really show what you have done. And you're right, in management consultant, there is a higher chance that every promise you do is an overpromise, because you can barely predict what happens. So there's different kinds of services, and these services that are more like the end result orientated, the customer pays for the end result, or it is the service that is more like the process that is done. So you pay them to do what they need to do, no matter if it worked out or not. I mean, if you were to hire someone to build a brick wall, it doesn't matter how much time they put in. If the brick wall doesn't work or doesn't stand there, it's basically useless time. But when it comes to people and organizational stuff, I can see there is a higher tendency to pay the people the price for, maybe if it's team building or something that is far less concrete.
Yeah, exactly. And then there is the second aspect to that, which is like the only promise I can make without knowing the client is I will probably be able to do something useful for you and you will be happy that you work with me. But because it's not specific, it's also extremely hard to put a price on that.
Yeah.
And if I had to put a price, because there is no clear value, no specific value, I would have to choose a lower price, or maybe the average price, which is not good if you believe that you're better than the average consultant. But instead, once you start the conversation with the client and you know exactly what exactly you can do for them, and then the good thing is that once you know what you can do for them, you can start putting numbers on this. And once you put numbers on the value that you generate to the client, then you can get a percentage of it as your fee. Yeah. And that will usually be higher than what else you can promise if you don't know the client.
Yeah.
So there is also this aspect that people like to promise to get more conversation, but in doing so, they need to lower their fees.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good thing. And what about the other 10 books that you have written? What is something you would want to talk about here?
Oh, let me think about it. Well, I think that one book which was very interesting was The Control Heuristic, which is about the difference between decision making and action taking. And the thing is that a lot of people, they say that they have a problem with decision making. And maybe they look solutions as to how do I make better decisions. Yeah. But what happens very frequently is that people don't have a problem with decision making, but they have a problem with action taking. So they already know what they should do, but they don't do it.
Mm.
And the thing is that if your problem is action taking, working on decision making will do absolutely nothing if the bottleneck is action taking.
Yeah.
So how do you overcome this bottleneck? And the point which I'm explaining in the book is that our brain does not work as one. It has multiple parts, and notably among those, there is the cortex, which is the part which is concerned with decision making, amongst others. And then there is another part in the brain, which is, now I'm simplifying a lot, but let's say it's the basal ganglia, which instead is concerned with action taking. And the thing is that often it happens that your cortex wants to do something. For example, your cortex says it would be a good idea if I go to the gym. And then your basal ganglia says, I don't feel like it. And then you don't go to the gym. The problem is, if this is the situation, and that's a very common situation, if the part of your brain which is not on board with going to the gym is the basal ganglia, then trying to convince the cortex more will have absolutely no advantage.
Yeah.
Because your cortex is already on board. The problem is another part of the... And the thing is that the cortex is the part that thinks. So you convince the cortex by bringing logical arguments. But that doesn't work on the basal ganglia because the basal ganglia literally is not connected to the part of the brain which takes... Like it's not connected in a way that transfers data to the part of the brain that takes decision. So that won't work. The part of the thing that the basal ganglia feels is emotions. It reasons in terms of emotions. And so the thing is, If, for example, your cortex decides you should go to the gym, but you find yourself with not going, the reason is because the emotions that are associated with going to the gym are negative.
Yeah, makes sense.
Are negative. Not with the consequence of the action, because almost everyone has positive emotions associated with the idea of getting fitter, but with the action itself. So it's not about the incentives. It's about how you feel with the action itself. And so the big argument which I'm making in the book is if your problem is action taking, then what you need to change is the emotional associations with the action that you find trouble taking. And then the last part of the book, of course, goes into how you do that.
Yeah. So the action part, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
as I understood it, so on the logical side, you're convinced. It might make sense on the logical side, and you might have positive associations with the end result, but not towards the action. And so you're kind of splitting the whole thing to really have a better view and how to manage the hard part, as you would say, the perfectly example with going to the gym. And do you think routines play a big role in that, in taking action?
well, the thing with routines is that if you do manage to get into a routine, it will help a lot for two reasons. One, because the routine has, well, it's a fact that once something becomes a habit, we are more likely to do it. And the second thing is because very often, if you do something enough times, it gets better.
Yeah.
So I know it myself. I remember when I learned to swim, the first time was painful, was horrible. Also skiing. First time I went to the ski, that wasn't fun. I just hurt my butt.
Yeah.
But then you do it a few times, and then it starts getting like the pain part decreases and the fun part increases. And so one good thing is the routine is that if you do something for, I don't know, 10 times or whatever, it starts getting better. And so the emotions that you associate with it are better. You start maybe building a relationship with the other people that go also to the gym, whatever. And so you're more likely to do it. The problem is that routine is a solution only if you do manage to get yourself to start the routine. Because otherwise, if you try to start the routine and you make the classic, I subscribe to the gym, but then I never go, then it won't help. Like a routine only helps in the measure that you've managed to get into the routine. Yeah.
So you need to be having the connection to like the positive, to what you're doing actually, and getting better results and getting, as you from a topic you have said earlier, getting more skilled. And because of your skill growing, you feel more successful in what you're doing. And this might also reinforce your will to proceed. If you're beginning and you feel like failing every time you're going on skis and you're falling, and the next time you have the success and doing like a longer ride and not get hurt, and you might think, yeah, that was fun. I did it, and this is like a good reinforcement, maybe.
Yeah, I think that the key is exactly making sure that the first experience is overall good, so that you are more likely after it to do it again rather than less likely. So in the case of the gym, I think that the most important thing is to make sure that the first time you go to the gym, it's a pleasurable experience, which makes you want to come back. Then what that means specifically, well, it depends a lot also on the individual. But I think it's important. And I see this a lot at school, for example. Like for me, one of the things we should do at school is to make sure, for example, if you want to introduce, equations, integrals, you should make sure that the experience for the kids is pleasurable, so that the reaction to you the first time that you mention this new subject is that they are looking forward to the next class and not to the opposite. And that applies to a lot, applies at work. Like a very important part of onboarding for me is, from the point of view of the company or the manager, figure out what are some key behaviors or some key tasks that you want the other person to do, and make sure that the first time they do it, it's a pleasurable experience for them. And it could be, for example, sales. I don't know, you want people to do some sales? Well, make sure that the first experience they have with it is pleasurable. How you do it? Maybe you have them call a client that you know is it's a relatively easy client. Maybe you prepare them. Maybe you do some role play before so that they are prepared and they are not scared. Maybe the first time you just make them watch a very experienced salesman that has a pleasurable experience, whatever, like different thing. But the kernel is, whatever you want your people to do, make sure that their first experience with it's a success and it's pleasurable, and so set them for success for that first experience. But a lot of people don't like it because they think, it's micromanagement. It's not micromanagement.
Yeah, and this is really a good thing in sales, and not to throw them into the cold water. But finally, this is like a common thing that people learned how to swim, as you mentioned before, by getting literally thrown into the water and told, now you need to swim. But you're right. This can work in some cases, but it's more like a necessity in overcoming it. It's like a struggle and being thrown out of the comfort zone. The comfort zone is something you should expand and not be thrown out of. So at least from the examples you have been stating, it is like building their overall confidence in doing the thing. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Basically confidence, but not confidence like as in, let's say confidence that they are super powerful or whatnot, but confidence in the sense that it will be worth doing it. If you do it, you will feel better than if you don't.
Yeah.
That's basically the kind of confidence that you really want to build.
So not that kind of persistent that you need to just hold it, and once it's over that you can forget the dreadful experience of maybe doing a sales call. But
this is going back to the short term and long term. This is a strategy that works only in the short term. It's a good strategy for the short term. Like if you need to do something once, you can push to it. I don't know, I just moved into a new apartment and I need to paint the walls.
Yeah.
Fine, I will only have to do it once. I can push it. I can use willpower, whatever.
Yeah.
It's a terrible idea if it's something that you want to do multiple times.
Yeah, that's really, really good to know. There are some cases, going a bit back into the short and long-term games, there are really some cases where you need this short-term energy to do something if you're not planning to do it. And right now, as you said, with the skills, it could be really the same action that you're taking, as I understood it, but the way you approach it can make it either a short-term thing or a long-term thing. You could probably train really great salesmen, if we take that example, if you just let them be more comfortable and more confident in what they're doing, or you can make people being afraid of sales, but it's basically maybe the same objective and the same task they are assigned to do, but the way you approach it can really, really can change their outlook.
Yeah, exactly. For salespeople, prepare them. Because if you just show them for the first call and they don't know what to say, they don't know what's going to happen and so on, then it's going to be a confusing experience, it's going to be a negative experience, and then no wonder that many of them will react with avoidance for the future. Then the tricky thing is that, of course, if you do it with 10 people, maybe there will be 1 or 2 people who come out of the experience still motivated.
Yep.
But the thing is, are you okay with that success rate? Because if you're okay with the 10, that you have 10 salespeople and 8 of them will react badly and you can just fire them or not renew their contract and then get the other 1 or 2, then it's a strategy. It's a strategy. But if you need all those 10 people to be motivated, then that's definitely not the way of doing it.
Yeah.
And so it's very important for us because when we are dealing with ourselves, we are one person. So we cannot use the law of large numbers on us. We don't want to use things which have a low probability of succeeding with ourselves. And so that's why I advise for using strategies that have a high success rate, which usually require a little bit more preparation, but you're more likely to work.
Yeah. So your example was more based around the environment and the system, as of said, maybe the employer providing or the organization providing a more successful, a more confident-based experience. But I'm a big advocate for taking own action and like the ownership for oneself. Is there like a trick or a tip you can say for doing this for yourself? So obviously it matters. The work environment is important, but is there something you can do yourself to have a more positive way and maybe experiencing something?
Well, one thing which I think it's important is to understand what the trajectory looks like. And by the trajectory, I mean, for example, let's imagine that I want to learn skiing.
Yeah.
And I never skied before. And I need to know that the general trajectory for learning skiing is the first day you will fall a lot, you will not have fun, and something like that. And after 1 week, you will not fall anymore, but it will still feel kind of awkward, and you won't really still see the point and the fun of it. And then maybe after 2 weeks, you learn how certain things are done better, and you start having fun, and suddenly it gets easier, and you will get why a lot of people start love skiing. And the thing is, if you know what's the trajectory and you are okay with it, then it's much more likely that you don't feel a failure after the first day, that you know that even if the first day all you did was falling, you still progressed and you are still closer to the goal because that's what the first day looks like a lot.
Yeah,
and so,
definitely.
And if you are not okay with it, you can prepare before. So you can ask yourself, what should I learn before I put the skis so that I learn how not to fall in 1 hour instead of one day, for example, or whatever. But the idea is to know what the trajectory looks like and to know that it won't be like a magic step, because a lot of people instead what they do is that they do the first day, the first experience, they do average or even better than average for what it is, what people at the first day do, and they think that it was that they did much worse or they are not cut for it or whatever, and then they feel bad.
So basically a more realistic view on the learning curve, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this makes total sense, and I can...
And of the feelings that will be associated with the learning curve.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. Also the feeling that you not only know what to expect, but also what it would feel like to really see. And skiing is a grandiose example. I mean, there's even a success if you manage to get the shoes on right and correctly and have your safety clothes and everything on. This is a success as well. So being prepared, and I can totally see that. It's something that I have experienced as well. So good point, good example. So a more realistic view on the learning curve, what you can expect, and then you can see, are you doing average, are you doing pretty good, but then not to be as frustrated when you don't go to, like, maybe the first day doing like ski training and expect to write down the biggest mountain you can find. So this is like the mindset many people have. I don't want to do this kids route. I want to go to the big mountain right from the first day. And this is something that is on one hand nice, that they are at least confident and think they can do this. This is a good mindset generally, but this is like an overconfidence, and I might be frustrated if they don't get to do this.
Yeah, exactly. And then also know it like on the other side, like also know like the trajectory, so that you know when instead you're going maybe too slow.
Yeah.
Because I remember, like even for me, like there were moments in my life or in my career or other things in which just got too complacent for a while, and then asked myself why I wasn't growing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also about knowing like maybe by day one you should do this, but by week one you should do that. Are you on track?
Mm-hmm.
And if you are not on track, are you okay with the slower growth? Because of course then it's a choice.
Yeah.
Like some people might be okay, whatever. You just need to know what's the reference. Let's say.
And everyone is different and has a different pace when it comes to like getting the goals. But it's at least it's a good orientation. It's like the average. You don't need to be exactly at this point at 1 week or exactly at this point in 3 weeks, but at least can see if you're progressing still or if you're like stagnant.
Yeah.
Or even get worse at some time. That could also happen. Yeah. Luca, is there anything else you might want to recommend to the listeners? Obviously, on my side, I would recommend your books, but is there something else, one thing people should learn or read, maybe?
Well, yeah, apart from my books, like you find them on Amazon, Luca Dellanna with double L and double N. But apart from that, two books which I've particularly enjoyed lately. So one is called How Big Things Get Done, and it's on project management. But don't think project management just as, I don't know, we are building a bridge. Because each one of us will be a project manager at least a couple of times in our lives. For example, your wedding, your house renovation, or when you buy a new car.
Yep.
And if you want to prevent the risk that there are some few mistakes that you might do, which bump the cost of those things by 30%, which if you're renovating a house, if you're planning a wedding or buying a car, it might be a considerable 30%, then I recommend reading the book, because it really helps to avoid the cost overruns, for example, even for those things. It's a fantastic book that I think should be required high school reading for everyone. And then another book which I really liked, well, it has a cheesy name, but it had the most profound impact on me. It's The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People by Stephen Covey. Very cheesy name, fantastic book.
Yeah. This is an example for not over-promising, but it's still promising, but it doesn't. It's not a title like "I will teach you to be successful" or something like that. But it's just a habit. Thank you for the recommendation, and thank you for the time. Maybe we can do another round if you want to. Just
Gladly.
Keep in touch, and see ya.
Thank you so much, Emil.
Bye.
If you've enjoyed listening to my podcast, you can show support by following me and hit the bell to never miss out on my latest content. I'd appreciate a positive review too. You can find more of my content on www.emildruth.com. Thanks and bye for now.